I think what's most depressing about this for many Jewish people and indeed non-Jewish people is just how predictable it all was. And we can hear Keir Starmer and other members of the cabinet, other officials tell us that it's deeply concerning and utterly appalling, but that doesn't stop it happening. And, this is not an isolated incident. It comes after the Yom Kippur terror attack at Heaton Park Hebrew congregation in Manchester back in October. That was a ramming, 2 people were killed. It comes after the explosion, the firebombing of the Hatzalah ambulances. These are ambulances run by a Jewish charity, a volunteer paramedic organization. It comes after petrol bottles and a brick were thrown at Finchley Reform Synagogue 2 weeks ago. Another attempted firebombing at Kenton United Synagogue the week before last. A counter-terrorism police operation that arrested 8 people over suspected arson plots against Jewish-linked sites. Suspected possible attack on the Israeli embassy when they found suspect items in Kensington Gardens, an arson attack on a memorial wall in Golders Green yesterday, Jewish schoolboys attacked in Belsize Park Station a couple of years ago, Jewish man attacked in Hendon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's constant. It doesn't matter how many times we hear the Prime Minister tell us there's no place for anti-Semitism in Great Britain. It's completely clear to all Jewish people and all watching, there is a place, there's a growing place for anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom, and no amount of money that he throws at Jewish security organisations will fix the root of this problem. In fact,
well, Jonathan, let me jump in for a moment, Jonathan, and just to ask you then. I mean, you have kind of put together that whole long list of things that we have talked about on the show, attacks on the Jewish community. What then would the community like to see? What would work, in your opinion?
They need to stop the people who are trying to kill us from trying to kill us.
How? What do you mean by that?
By effectively imposing the full force of the law on them, by policing properly, by stopping the ideological root causes of the hatred against Jewish people, by standing up against our national broadcaster, the BBC, when it constantly slurs Israel with calumnies about the Jewish state, by stopping universities from pushing this ridiculous, rabid, anti-Jewish inversion of the news from the Middle East, by stopping the constant chants on the street to globalize the intifada. There was a thing called the knife intifada in Israel, where Palestinian Arabs decided to start stabbing Jews all over the place at bus stops and the like, because this was a low-tech way of attacking Jews to try and kill them. Well, guess what? That's what arrived in Golders Green today. There was a thing in Israel called the ramming intifada, where Palestinian Arabs decided to drive vehicles into Jews, often waiting at bus stops or on the street. Guess what? That arrived in Manchester on Yom Kippur. It's quite obvious to anybody who wants to see what's going on here, how this is happening, why it's happening, who is predominantly doing it. It is predominantly Muslim extremists, Muslim terrorists, and the far left who are working hand in glove with them, who are pursuing these repulsive aims against Jewish people, who are pinning it to inversions of what's going on in Israel. And I'm afraid to say the BBC and many other media are also guilty of constantly perpetuating this hatred with their twisted and warped view of what's going on with Jews and with Israel. And it's so obvious to most Jewish people that this is what's happening. It's so obvious to lots of non-Jewish Britons that this is what's happening. And yet every time it happens to us, we're told that there's no place for it in our society, that it's going to end, that we must take it very seriously, that there'll be higher walls, more security, more guards, more police. But what will deal with it is if Britain starts standing up against ideologies and twisted ideologies which are deliberately targeting Jews and
Jonathan,
others.
let me just talk to you about, I can talk to you about what happens locally, and the fact that I have been privileged to speak with members of the Jewish and Muslim community locally. And I spoke with many people who have stood against what you have characterised. They are chatting with their neighbours. They are talking in community halls about what's going on. They are actively trying to go against what you've been characterising. What else would you like ordinary members of the public to do? What because you've been talking about things in a very kind of in a large scale, and yet I'm really conscious that if you're driving home tonight and normally you chat to others in a very diverse community and you have good bonds there, what would you like to say to those people?
Well, I think ordinary people can do a lot in changing the climate and the fashions. So I think it's very fashionable for people who don't necessarily know a lot about many of the issues that I deal with every day in my work to have very strong opinions on them. And it's very difficult to buck a trend of fashion when you have friends around you or colleagues around you who demand and expect you to take a particular position. But I think that each of us can make a decision to stand up against calumnies, to stand up against untruths, to stand up against hatred, whether it comes from a religious background or a political one or an ideological one. And I think every single person has within them the strength to deal with these sorts of things. I mean, look, for example, at the disgusting amount of hatred being spread by the Green Party. Look at the disgusting amount of hatred and tolerance of hatred that the far left of the Labour Party accommodates. Look at what these people are doing. And I'm sorry if people think that maybe I'm being party political about this, but that's because we have really, for the first time in modern British history, these sorts of parties which are accommodating, welcoming, and even
the thing is, Jonathan, those parties are not here in order to kind of give their perspective on what you are saying. So unfortunately, I'm not able to come back and to share those views with our listeners at the moment. So we will leave that there. But Jonathan, I appreciate you being on the show today. And one of the things that's amazing about the BBC is we're able to give a voice to a large range of views, and I'm glad that we've been able to hear from you today. Jonathan Sacerdoti is a Jewish journalist.